Welcome, 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 welcome. That's Tony Jones. I do not own the rights to this music. Okay, I love that part. I'm a hydrated woman, especially for juicy. Again, this is Tony Jones. It's one of my favorite. I think it will probably be the theme song for our series. I'll make sure that I tag her and let her know. So she is indirectly an honorary member of our tribe. And so welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Latanya Taylor, affectionately known as the Rev Coach, the Juicy Spirit Mama, the Priestess of Purpose, Pleasure, Passion, and Profits. And I hesitated because the truth of the matter is I get to acknowledge the part of me that is Adefun, Keturah Gila, that is coming to you, affectionately known as Latanya Taylor. And as I continue to embody that new name, bear with me. But I'm coming to the tribe today because we are returning to our Womanhood Wisdom Wednesday Tribe Talks. I know that's a long name, but we've been doing this for several years. And I want to introduce to you a new series, The Game of Feminine Abundance and How to Play It. The Game of Feminine Abundance and How to Play It. So I want you all to take a moment and get on in here, tag your good people if you will. I won't be long, but I will be strong. And I hope to be able to be of service to you easily, effortlessly, and under grace. I call forth the energy, the power of my ancestors, my archangels, and all of those that are assigned to my spiritual court. For I know that when I come, it's my intention to be a vessel to you in this moment. And so as we reach a season where everyone is talking about the economy and folks are talking about recession and the market crash, we must be mindful even as we get ourselves in position to prosper in our lives and in our families, not just to save, not just to have a backup plan, but this is important for us as women because I always say this and I'll say this again. There is no juicy woman who is worried, who is angry, who's in lack, who's in fear. And so the two don't always go together. And so it is important in my heart, mind, and spirit in terms of working with so many of my sisters in the realm of feminine leadership is for us to rise up to be able to do the things that we desire, the things that we know that we're worthy of, the things that we say we want, even with all of the knowledge that each and every one of us has in the different realms of our indigenous ancestry, reclaiming that ancestry, being able to own land, those things that we talk about in terms of divesting ourselves from the emotions of political parties, those things that we talk about around healing our religious mindset and recovering ourselves from those dogmatic principles that keep us in bondage. All of those are steps that lead to emancipation and liberation such that it can show up in our lives and some of the choices that we are able to make. And so, there's enough videos here on YouTube and even in the group where there have been events that have been happening, that have forecasted, that have broadcasted into our lives in the collective consciousness of the world that has caused fear, that has caused panic, that has caused us sometimes to make decisions that we regret making because what we weren't informed, or we were operating on limited information at the time. Some of us are awakening not only spiritually, but because the spiritual awakening is giving way to an awakening in our finances, how we do our finances, how we do our relationships, how we parent, how we have friendships, and in all walks of life, how we communicate. All of these things make up the total life of the woman that I call the shero's journey. When the shero begins to take her journey, she leaves. She has to move out of the sector of where she is and cross a threshold. The first phase of the shero's journey is crossing the threshold of what you have known into an unknown factor. One of the greatest obstacles to us creating more abundance, more prosperity, healthier relationships, more whatever, is when we think that we already know. So what's interesting is when you begin your own shero's journey, you cross the threshold, not one time, but you cross the threshold again, and then you come back home, and then you begin the journey again. So when we think we know, when we think that we don't have any other work to do, then we stop growing, we stop expanding. And sometimes there's outside factors that cause us to shut down, cause us to say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. Or no, I'm not going to take that risk. I cannot tell you how many times I may have made an investment in myself, in my business, and may have been deflated or may have stretched so hard to get into the position to invest, and then realize like, oh my goodness, like I already knew this, or I already, but when I dropped down out of the ego mindset, or out of the arrogance that we inherit through Western culture, sometimes of, I have a degree, I've been doing it on my own, I don't ask anybody for help, whatever the byproduct of this independence that we have become so accustomed to championing in our lives, even though the truth of the matter is, hey, hey, tribe, what's up, tribe? Hey, beautiful you. I can't see everybody's name because I'm broadcasting in both places, but so if you sign your name I will call you by name, because I love connecting with you all, and Spirit told me come right back here. So let me just stay in the pocket, because I want to really you to understand my why I'm coming to you. I want you to understand your why. Sometimes it's things that you have written to me privately about, or it has come up in your private coaching sessions, or it has come up in a consultation, and some of you may have been able to get the consult but not be able to go to the next step. Some of you have done some part of the work. Maybe you're even a graduate of my 6 months rites of passage process, and you got juicy. You got your juicy life. You redefined your feminine for yourself. You've activated those spiritual gifts. A lot of the women from that specific tribe are thriving, but then you hit walls, or because life comes at you, and life comes at you fast, and everything we cannot predict. Some of you have the type of spiritual gifts where you can see something on the horizon, but you may not know the specifics. So I want you to think about your why. When you think about feminine abundance, when you think about positioning yourself and repositioning yourself to prosper, to play a different game in your life, in your business, in your love, do you still see it as something that is compartmentalized? Most juicy butterflies and graduates of the 6 months rites of passage program have finally seen that it's not compartmentalized, but it's a hard habit to break, particularly if you're still an employee working for people. And I say this for also on several levels, where even if You work for yourself. There are stages to becoming the executive that may begin with self-employment. Self-employment is just one degree above working as an employee. You can be self-employed for years, but never really an entrepreneur. And sometimes you can teeter in between. We'll talk about that in terms of the stages of leadership as an entrepreneur soon, because sometimes we are hard on ourselves about the natural stages of developing a business, developing that independence, emancipating yourself. But you don't have to be hard on yourself. The stages are necessary. If nobody taught you, if you didn't come from a family where you organically saw it, if you weren't a child that was standing behind the register ringing up the like other cultures, ringing up the products and the goods, or doing the numbers in the back office, or you were the one that was making the phone calls, arranging the appointments, you didn't get a chance maybe to do that. You saw a parent that got up every morning to go to a job. And so now you make a decision based on whatever awakened you, whether it was a painful experience that awakened you, or whether it was a desire for more that awakened you, or if it was something else that happened that awakened you. However you got here, you're here, not by accident. The same way that you came through your mother's womb, and you weren't an accident there. We are reborn and rebirthed time and time again, because we're constantly going through the She-Rose journey, which is the womb of transformation. Rebirth is not a one-time event. You may hear me say all of this again, but sometimes we need reminders, because I want you to be able to hear yourself. And so in this 7-year, you all know that I love to talk about the numbers, the astrology, and the personality typing, because the more we understand ourselves, the less we condemn ourselves. And then you start to be able to work with yourself, your natural blueprint, who you are, who you are called to be. Our personality gets shaped by circumstances oftentimes. But who we are at the soul level is beyond personality. Y'all with me? So as I talk about my why for after listening and speaking to several levels in between, there are certain executives and clients who don't need to be prepared to play a certain game because they're already in it. Some of us are in and out of it. Some of us are in it at certain levels. Some of us have taken a knee. Something happened, life happened. You had a business, you had a plan, you had a vision. You step back on it, or whatever the case may be. It could be something as simple as network marketing, and you didn't like that. But when we talk about the game of feminine abundance and how to play it, as a series, my intention is to break this down into small bite-sized pieces, because oftentimes we think we know, and there are hidden spots, blind spots, and sometimes sore spots. Somebody capture that in the comments. Hidden spots, blind spots, and sore spots. So as I open this series, there may be opportunities, even if you are in a place of happiness. That's another thing I want to say to you. You do not always have to invest in yourself when you are in trouble, when you're sad, when you're broken down. In fact, it is more wise to get in front of the desires of your heart than to try to catch up to it from the back, from the rear when life happens. Your vision helps you to get in front of it. Because your vision, as my beloved master teacher says, will pull you forward when life sometimes pushes you back. Now, I edited that a little bit, but the point is, we're going to break this down into small bite-sized pieces. Okay? And the first thing that we want to look at is overcoming emotions, lack consciousness in business. Overcoming emotions and lack consciousness in business. You with me? I can honestly say that I didn't know what I didn't know. I can tell you that as an employee, though, I was cultivated and trained on how to conduct myself in the boardroom, in meetings, in negotiations. And so as I began to do more executive work, so for instance, some of you all may not know, or if you're from DC, let me know if you're from DC. You'll know this. You'll understand this. I think this is probably where I got the best training. I'd already had it before being in the Nation of Islam. There's a lot of discipline that you learn and how to conduct yourself there as well. Emotional discipline, but emotional discipline is not always emotional intelligence. It is a gateway for emotional intelligence, but I knew through years of working on high level projects, partnerships, and having to coordinate between departments. So some of you, let me give a good example. You all know anything about teachers unions? Anybody know anything about teachers unions? I'm waiting on you to answer. You don't have to be an educator. If you lived in Washington, D.C., one of the largest teachers unions in the country, sometimes it would be controversial. It would make the news. So I worked at the level of the mayor. I worked at the level of administration in the Department of Education, and had to coordinate sometimes between other departments on initiatives between the community, the leadership, and the politicians, right? And so I learned trial by fire. DC taught me so much about both emotional discipline and emotional intelligence. Boy, I could tell you some stories. And that's why I love being able to come casually in the group, sometimes just for story time, because I probably need to just, get these stories out of me because they'll bless somebody. But let me just tell you, DC is no joke when it comes to community activism, at least during the time when I came to DC. And so I've had an opportunity to work on some amazing projects and collaborations, but they weren't always easy. And so I had to learn how to govern myself sometimes when they would be cursing each other out, making accusations, not get caught up in the fray, being able to be neutral, yet still advocate for the position of the community and still move the project needle along. Anybody ever been in that position? Even if you haven't, if you know anything about DC and DC politics, especially back in the day where we have a lot more community activism and leaders, then you'll understand. What happens though when it's your vision and the partners that you have at the table are the committees in your own head? Are your partners at your table your allies, your inner table? Because that will determine when it's time to partner with other people, sometimes what shows up at the table. And if you don't have the emotional intelligence, or you are always letting your emotions determine whether you start, you pause, you stop, you shut down, you turn around, or you get caught up in the reaction of things, that sometimes can stop the progress. And we are this year living in this feminine abundance in the Queen's piece. And so we are using the analogy of the chessboard. Even when we use the analogy of the chessboard, and everybody that's in the Queen's piece, you already know why. at a deeper level of the feminine. But when you look at the chessboard, or when you look at chess players, you have to govern your emotions. Even if you play Monopoly or any other type of games where you have to think and be strategic. Maybe, I grew up also in an era where I saw my family playing cards and spades, and sometimes it would get so heated. It turned me away from cards. That's when I knew that I was empath. Well, I didn't know, excuse me. I didn't know that I was an empath, but that's when I knew later how empaths respond to certain things in life. So I watched a lot of the folks in my family get turned all the way up. I didn't see the laughter. Sometimes there would be if they were winning. We can laugh when we're winning. But what about when you don't have a good hand? Or what about when you're in the game and somebody makes a move that checkmates you? Do you give up? Do you quit? Emotions are very important to our feminine nature, because as women, we are emotional creatures. And I use the example of being able to govern myself as an employee, because we get conditioned on being able to go to jobs and not cry, never let them see you sweat. Come on. We go into jobs and we control ourselves when we want to fight, curse people out. Not, you know what I mean? Now, if you don't, you might have a history of quitting or being fired or being written up and unemployed. That's a different type of personality type. But most people who have gone to school, gotten good grades, the stuff we get that conditions us to be good employees. But how have we been conditioned to be leaders? How have we been conditioned to be legacy makers? How have we been conditioned to run multiple businesses? How have we been conditioned? I'm asking a question. I want y'all to talk back to me. I see I'm going to catch some of these comments. And depending on your astrological sign, your life experience with poverty, your money story, where you are in what season of your life as a woman. You could be starting over after a divorce. You could be just really finding your wings and being able to really navigate and fly in the way that you want to after raising children. Or you could just be starting or being honest with yourself that the career that you have is not necessarily in alignment with your purpose. You could be anywhere on the spectrum. Every woman is in a different season. But one thing that's true, that no matter what season you're in, if you have not done the inner work to look and really question the habit of emotions, they will still show up and sometimes take over at moments when you need to be able to use the emotions, but not let them use you. So I want to give a couple of examples, and I want to also read something to you. This is from Minister Farrakhan. He says, he talks about emotions rising rising above emotions and into the thinking of God. Rising above emotions and into the thinking of God. A lot of us have not really had that type of spiritual reference point, much less to transfer it over into aspects of our business and our vision creation, our self-mastery, our vision mastery. So when we talk about emotions, we're talking about energy and motion. Can we get that? High five. energy in motion. And women, we have a lot of energy in motion, because if you study us according to the moon cycle, we could be at any different phase between ourselves and the different and that's directly connected to the womb, but the different phases of our own womb cycle, which affect our emotions. Now, that's where we start getting into the conversation about diet and food and health and wellness. And there's even a deeper conversation that we could go into in another time in our spaces. But when we are sometimes called moody, and rather than judge it, the question that I'm proposing to you today is, how can you explore it? How can you reset? And when we look at energy in motion, there's a combination of breathing and hormones and hydration and lithium levels in our body and all types of factors that control our hormones and our emotions. Now, when we talk about the emotions, one of the quotes that I love from Minister Farrakhan, he says, every biological act of the physical body is directed to the predominant goal to stay alive. To do this, every organism must preserve itself in the face of external forces which threaten its existence. And when it ceases to work energetically on its own behalf, something will finally destroy it. As a part of the defense against external forces, the organism walls itself off from alien elements. And he goes on to talk about the defense mechanism sometimes that our emotions are. Okay, so I want to establish that sometimes our emotions and our habits around our emotions are defense mechanisms, and certain things are released that make us believe that it's true. And one of the examples that I want to give is anger. I want to give 2 examples today, and then the rest we're going to deal with in the Queen's piece. Hey, what's up, sis? Hey, Shanta. Hey, Tony. I see you all. Good to see you. We're going to deal with this in the Queen's piece in terms of business, our money, and emotions for the month of February. February is all about love. And so this is a good time for us to look at our relationship with our love and unconscious hate of money and judgments of money and success and judgments of success. And sometimes you'll never say that you have judgments about success and money with yourself, but you can find your judgments and your criticisms basically through what you see, feel, and believe about other people. So we've established that there's a biological event that happens with our emotions. There's a psychological event that happens with our emotions, sometimes as a relationship to trauma, which can also be a defense mechanism, or how we've been conditioned to think about performance. That's when we start to even get into performance anxiety. And if you are a high performer or a high achiever, you oftentimes have a relationship with performance that feeds your emotions and how you respond to the external factors that I just quoted about from rising above emotions into the thinking of God. This is not really available to the public. So I'm only going to do a few of these quotes because the foundation is really is feminine abundance. And so when we look in terms of what's feminine abundance, because you can be feminine and then the feminine has so many different faces. We talk about the soft life. How many of you can say, yes, you are interested in a softer life? Let me know, because I could stop here if nobody's interested. I'll wait on you to let me know. I see some of your other comments about spades. All of us have a money story. I see that. Okay, I got one. I got one. Yes, yes. I got another. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Yes, yes. Okay. Well, here we go. They're different. Soft doesn't, soft for you may be a little different in context of, again, your birth chart, your the personality type that you are. Soft does not have to look just like your sister. So we're not here to say your expression of passion, your expression of joy, your expression has to be void of creativity, void of fierceness. Your softness doesn't have to do that. What we're talking about when we say that we want to have a softer life is, oftentimes we have been performing in our masculine energy, and we have been informed by the West through grind culture, hustle mentality, and now everybody has a brand. If you haven't seen my posts talking to spiritual entrepreneurs, empaths in business, healers, and creatives, you want to see what I'm saying around this whole thing on branding. Everybody now has a brand. Some people were forced out of their jobs because of the situation with the pandemic. But what happens if there's another one? What happens for us? So let's look at this, because when people had to go home and you weren't just performing and being rated by what you produced for an employee, some people had full-blown meltdowns in their marriage, in their families, with themselves, with their bodies, with their health, because we had to be still and go within, forced to go within. And one of the emotions that oftentimes is the most judged, the most misunderstood, is anger for women and femininity, and for spirituality. We should on ourselves around anger, when all energy in motion is a signal. And instead of us stopping to ask, what is the signal? Excuse me. What is the information that I need so that I can make my next move? We should on ourselves, especially if you have been overly religious and you think you're not supposed to be angry. If you grew up in a household where your anger was disciplined, punished. Now there's a new form of parenting where people are embracing and working with children around their anger and expressing their anger in healthy ways, giving words to their anger, giving motion to their anger. But if you didn't grow up like that, oftentimes we stuffed our anger, redirected it in some other way, or found escapes because of anger, rage, which makes us sick. So using this example in terms of feminine abundance, this can be a blocker to sometimes our motion, our next move on the chessboard, in playing the queen's piece in our life, in opening up our roads and pathways of prosperity, opportunity, creativity, partnership, collaboration, because usually underneath anger is another emotion that we have not allowed to come forth or explored. So anger is one. Now, on the flip of anger, is another one that gets overly spiritualized, partially taught, and certainly not given modalities to implement in a way that can be leveraged. And the second one today that I'm going to talk about is this thing around forgiveness. And we should on ourselves about we shouldn't be angry, and we should forgive. Yet we have not really explored the alchemy of forgiveness for self first, and so we position forgiveness around other people, other situations, and other circumstances, thereby never fully having the atonement and resolve in yourself. And so here goes another level of judgment, criticism, stuffing, and quite frankly, inauthenticity, because you really haven't forgiven yourself. You really haven't forgiven others, but because you've should it on yourself, sometimes your needs don't get met. These are blockers that lack consciousness loves. So if you grew up in poverty, you have never explored the religious concepts that you have that make you feel like you should do this, you should do that. They can stay stuffed in the body, the mind, the spirit, and show up as experiences where you have to bump your head along the way instead of getting in front, as I said, and making some new choices and new decisions, because anger can be leveraged. Forgiveness for yourself can also be leveraged to clear and open the way for you to begin to reposition yourself to prosper, to have a new relationship with business, because business requires, the truth of the matter is, it requires emotion for you and your vision, but not necessarily for your strategies and for the decisions that you make. And that's a delicate balance sometimes, even when we're making chess moves for ourselves. So when you think about your why, when you think about the last time that you were in your flow, in your zone, when you were ready to take your first step, your second step, or your next level step, what stopped you? Who stopped you? What did you tell yourself? What did you hear around you? What did you need to hear? What did you need to tell yourself? And why didn't you? Anyone want to answer? Some things can be, I'll just do it myself. I don't want to ask anybody for anything. I got this. If I want to get it done right, I have to do it myself. All the while, resentment is the cousin of anger. Rage is the rebellious baby of anger. If I want to eat, then I got to do it. But how do you feel about that? Because this is important, rather than swallowing and choking down and creating illness and disconnection in your relationships with other people. We have to be willing to examine the threat to our next move. Because once something is perceived as a threat to our belief systems, there's a reaction in the brain similar to the very antigens in the body that reacts to put you in survival mode and protect you from an imagined enemy. When the enemy are the inner me's, the same committee that sometimes we have to go in boardrooms and meetings and executive walls and be able to conduct ourselves, but we lose it oftentimes when it comes to ourselves. There's enough happening on the planet right now and in the culture and in society. Many of us are having to unlearn so much misinformation, from our identity to our nationality to creative financing and funding, saving versus budgeting, investing. Many of us are having to reposition and relearn or learn for the very first time things that we've never been taught. So we don't need the emotions to be the block, but we do need the emotions to be the signal. We need the emotions to be in motion and not stuck in our mind, stuck in our heart, stuck in our womb, patting us around our middle, patting us here, patting us where we're overthinking. And then now we have to lose the weight, the WEIGHT and the WAIT, that keeps us from making the next move. And so I wanted to just give two examples today, because each and every one of us can explore our emotional patterns. We all have them. There's always a first response when triggered. What do you do when you're triggered? Particularly with regards to money, with regards to making a move for your business, or for love if you got the business locked down, because these are things that vibrate on the same energy, believe it or not. Some of you who've worked with me know that. And I show you how every time you do work with me, which we are going to explore in this edition of the Queen's Piece, Living the FAB Formula. FAB is Feminine Abundance Basics. And I invite you to join us, but I want you to meet me here next Wednesday at 1 p.m. as well. Stay tuned to the things that are streaming through me. I said that, I actually had to do a dissertation on this whole thing around branding, messaging, and marketing for women in business. And I learned so much. And, I've never really gone into sharing it publicly, but this year I get a chance to share something that I had to write. I had to write a whole dissertation. And I said, and my professors actually encouraged me to publish it. And maybe I will. What do you think? But it was all around our communication when it comes to our relationship with money. I actually forgot, because we're always moving and accomplishing the next thing, and I really was like, okay, check that off the list and moved on. But it makes so much sense why it's time for us to queen up, to put our crowns on. We cannot continue to have the little girls conversation around our femininity where it's just feel good. It's not just the feel good, looking to the feminine just for the feel good. It's being able to know how to be the alchemical woman that you are when it doesn't feel good, and still be able to manifest, make the move on the chessboard, and play the Queen's Piece, PEACE, versus falling into pieces, PEICES. And some of us are comfortable with our meltdowns by ourselves versus challenging our meltdowns in the company of other masterminds and support and accountability and love, and being able to experience having a sacred space hell. And how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And that's what we're doing for the Queen's Piece and the moves that we are making this year on several levels of our masterminding together, and also opportunities for us to play the next level game of new mind, new money, new energy in the feminine abundance factor for yourself that's customized, that's tailor-made. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about next week is sales, because our whole a lot of our session is going to be able to shift where we sit around sales and selling. And I assure you, you do not want to miss this one in the Queen's piece, but I'm going to give you a little sample next week as well, because many of us have objections to selling, and that's also a blind spot, a hidden spot, and a sore spot for many of us when it comes to playing the game of feminine abundance. So we're going to continue this series possibly all year, because next year is going to be an 8th year and the way is going to open. But you want to plant the seeds, water the seeds, till the garden. You want to be able to make the moves on the chessboard so that you can go back and then do it all over again in season. So I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I look forward to connecting with you much more in this new series. We're going to resume our Womanhood Wisdom Wednesdays, Tribe Talks. And when you hear Wednesdays, I want you to hear win, W-I-N-S days, okay? Because we are going to play the game to win. And you all can check out my YouTube video, 4 ways to play. And I just want to know who's ready to play to win. Let's get into the mindset of playing to win. Go check out that video so you'll understand where you're falling on the 4 ways to play. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. See you on the other side, and hopefully that'll be soon.